Hello, it's Dave here with the second half of my Bhutan travel report. And in the first video I went over some background information about Bhutan and the political system and so on, and also the trek up to the Tiger's Nest Monastery. And in that video I made a mistake. I called it the Eagle's Nest Monastery. That's not correct. It's the Tiger's Nest Monastery. So I'll go back and correct that. And then the last half of the video was the interview that I had with the Buddhist monk. I know that from talking with some of you, you found that interesting, and people in particular commented on the story that the monk told about the 3 or 4-year-old who went to his parents and said, "Hey, I'm not an ordinary guy. I'm reincarnated from the king in the 17th century, and I'm going to be your king." And so then he grows up, and sure enough, he becomes the king. And so that's how that works. And so if any of you have 3 or 4-year-olds in your home and they come forward with a story about a past life and who they're going to be, take note of that. You never know. You could be raising like a very important person in this world. So anyway, watch for that. Anyway, that's the past video. And if you haven't seen it, I'll put a link in the description below so you can go and check it out. And while you're doing that, if you watch that video or this one, if you're so inclined, give a thumbs up or a comment in the comments section, or forward these videos to any friends who might be interested in Bhutan. I'm trying to spread the word on Bhutan, so feel free to do that if you're so inclined. So in this video, it's going to be more of a people and places kind of video, and so I'll share some of the places that we went to and the people we encountered and so on. And it's always a terrific thing in traveling to run into people that you don't expect to meet and that sort of thing. So I'll have some of that, and I will also have a segment on a fairly unique Bhutanese cultural phenomenon, which I don't think you would have known about. I sure didn't know about this before. But anyway, it's a cultural kind of thing, and it's also part of the Buddhist belief system, really. And so I'll explain that. But more importantly, I'll have photos of that also. And so I just hope that YouTube doesn't take this down for violating some kind of family code or something like that. But anyway, watch for that later in this video. So the first thing I want to talk about and share with you is the whole notion of festivals, which are a very big deal in Bhutan. And we went to a couple of festivals in cities, or towns anyway, and then one at a kind of a rural location, so you'll be able to see clips and pictures from both of those. And our guide Sangay will talk a little bit about the importance of festivals in Bhutan.
Festivals in Bhutan are either mostly celebrated in my country at the end of the years, especially after the cultivation of the crops and like that. And this is a time, especially for a merrymaking time, a happy time for the farmers, those who are working in the farm, as after having their heavy summer schedule and then after cultivating their crops. Actually, when I say about the festivals, it will be with the dance, our local dance and the marks dance. Marks dance are to give the people an awareness of the life after the death sometimes, and when they are alive. The red marks represents the red, and the black marks, they represent the terrifying form of the local guardian deities or the protectors that we are going to encounter after our death. So they will be singing that if there is no tree, there will be no birds. When there is no bird, like ecological of our society will be vanishing. So these kind of things happens in our country.
The following are more sights and sounds of this rural festival.
thu mấy nụ kiêng ngọ
mấy nhung
ui
Much of our trip through Bhutan was in rural areas, and so we were always very keen to photograph people going about their daily lives. And one thing we like to do is if we were driving down the road and there was an interesting person, we'd stop the van, and all of a sudden you had 4 guys with cameras around this unsuspecting person. And but our guide always did a good job of explaining who we were, what we were up to, and so on. And invariably, everybody come away with a very good experience of that encounter. So that's something we like to do. And we also visited farmhouses and that sort of thing. So anyway, this next series of pictures will be a look at rural life in Bhutan. I stumbled across this woman and her daughter off the trail somewhere, and what they were doing was cooking up a batch of ara, which is an alcoholic drink, a whiskey-like drink that is very popular in Bhutan, and she used this root as part of the flavoring for her ara, which she would have harvested somewhere on the property, I'm sure. And her young daughter spoke English and was very keen to participate in the conversation. And so I asked her if she would show me her house and the inside of her house. So she asked her mother, and sure enough, they said it was okay. So she proceeded to show me all the different rooms in their house. And I must say it was a very tidy and orderly house. And like all houses, there's the living and cooking areas and so on, as well as a temple area. And Warren had joined me partway through. And so after our tour of the house, we each reached into our pockets and gave her a ballpoint pen. And so now this young girl has a pen with the name and address of the Firestone tire store in my town. And so she was quite pleased with all of that. On our travel days, we would often have lunch at the side of the road, and the fellows would serve up a hot meal just like that, and that was always very enjoyable. These are some of the people on the road pictures, and this particular family was doing road repair work, and so which meant that the whole family had to be out there, including the infant, as they go about doing their work. Following are more pictures of people on the road, as well as some farmyard images as well.
Regehr
One day we went for a walk down this beautiful valley dotted with small farms, and we came upon this farmhouse, and we met this lady who was a real character, and she had a milk cow and calf in the yard, and so I decided that she needed help milking this cow. So she gave me a bucket and said, go for it. And I got a few squirts in the bucket, but that was about it. I think the calf had beat me to it. But anyway, so much for milking a cow. And later she graced us with a song, which was really nice.
Beautiful. These people were talking.
One day, travel mate Warren and I were hiking up a pretty steep trail, and so we stopped at a shady spot to take in some water. And then we saw this fellow coming up the trail behind us with a load of straw, and so he set down his load next to us, and we offered him some water, but he said that he didn't drink water, he only drank Ara, but he didn't have any money. And so Warren persuaded him to take a power bar at least. And after the second time of him saying he didn't have any money, I fished some bills out of my wallet and gave them to him. And he seemed very pleased with that. And he loaded up his load and carried on up the trail. One day we made an excursion to visit this nomad family at this very remote location way up on the mountainside. And this is a family that lives very separate from the rest of the community around them. And they have a very distinct style of dress and style of hair. And so we got to visit them and see them in their home. And we spent a very interesting couple of hours with them. Our tour took us to the city of Punakha, and we went and checked out the Punakha Dzong, which is this building that you see here. And I have to say, of all my travel, that's one of the most impressive buildings I've seen anywhere. And so it was quite something, and made even more remarkable by the fact that it was built in the years 1637 to 1638. And so then that they could build such a structure such as this at that time is quite amazing. And this Dzong is such that it's in this valley which leads to India, and so in order to travel through this valley you had to pass through this Dzong and pay taxes and whatnot. And so the doorways inside this structure are big huge things so that a horse and rider could pass through, and because that's how many people traveled at that time. So anyway, all in all, a very remarkable and incredible building to look at, and I'm sorry I don't have more pictures of it, but it's really quite something. But the thing I wanted to talk about now is after we toured the Dzong, Samgay and I went to a local store and bar kind of place, and because I wanted to audio record him talking about some of the things that we've talked about in these videos. And so we did that, and I recorded him talking about the G&H and healthcare and these different things. And there was other people in the bar who wanted to be part of the conversation and correct him on his details a couple of times. And so we finished the recording and decided to just chat with the local people there. So the young girl that you see in the picture, she talked about school and whatnot, and her ambition was to have a shop that sold high fashion accessory items. And so that's probably a reasonable proposition for her, and would be a step up from the shop her mother was operating there. But and then I asked the police officer what were some of the policing issues around there. And he said that, well, in Bhutan there's quite a low crime rate, so there's not, that wasn't a big thing. But but one of the constant issues they were dealing with there was that farmers from up and down the valley would come into the city with their vehicles, and they wouldn't have a proper driver's license or insurance and registration for their vehicles. So this was a big problem. And so then I thought, man, oh man, if that's your biggest problem, you've got it pretty good. And so that was sort of part of what he said. And the other fellow that you see in the picture there, he was a IT consultant, and he'd worked in Qatar or somewhere like that, and been out of work since the pandemic started. So at this time he was angling to go to Australia and get work there, and that's a common thing for young professionals in Bhutan, to go to Australia and get jobs there. So anyway, we had quite a nice time, and we took a selfie and made our departure, and I left feeling that, well, this is one of the more interesting conversations I've had over a beer for quite a while. So anyway, all in all, was another nice day in Bhutan. Taking pictures in Bhutan wouldn't be complete without having pictures of some of the monks, and so here are a few examples. So at the outset, I said that there was this unique cultural phenomenon in Tibet that I wanted to share with you. And so what I was referring to was the common use of the image of the phallus that is painted on houses and business establishments and so on, which is common throughout the country, as well as carved wooden phalluses that are mounted above doorways often, or hanging from the corners of houses and so on. And so where this comes from is that in the 17th century there was a Buddhist monk from Tibet. He claimed that his phallus had the power to drive away demons and evil spirits and bring peace and harmony to wherever he was. And so this notion was accepted back then in the 17th century, and we're in the 21st century, and it's still, the notion is still accepted, and the practice of using this image to protect your house and your business from evil spirits still goes on to this day. And so then I must say that I went to some trouble to avoid having this image show up in any of the video up until this point, but I'll be making up for that now. So anyway, if you check into the fancy hotel in downtown Thimphu, the capital, this would be an image that you would see. And also at another hotel, this would be the image there. And if you're going for pizza at the Himalayan pizza joint in, forget where this was, this is the image that you would see. And so I think you get the picture here. But I'll have Sanjay describe this a bit more, and I'll show a few more images just to illustrate how commonplace and normal this is, and it's just an accepted thing. So anyway, here's Sanjay.
The phallus, that painting of the phallus, and then the wooden phallus that you can see on the houses, painted on the houses, hanged from the four direction. In the 16th century, we have a guy who came from Tibet. He is known as a divine madman. Especially during that time, he used his phallus as a weapon to subdue the evils. And that is the reason why we paint the phallus and on the house, hang it from the doors, hang it from the four corners, especially to protect your house from four kinds of evil, and then to have fertility in your house.
So from this picture you can see you could buy a phallus necklace or a keychain, or a wooden one to put in your shelf, but I must say I wasn't tempted to buy any of them. The next set of pictures are of flags, which you see all over the place, and the tall white ones are for deceased souls, and the colored ones all have their own specific meaning. The architecture in Bhutan is quite distinctive, with a lot of decorative detail, and here are pictures of various buildings. And last but not least, here are a few pictures of scenery that we saw along the way. Okay, well, this brings me to the end of this video and my Bhutan travel report. So thanks for watching if you're still with me. And I must say that putting these videos together is a little bit of a job, but rewarding nonetheless, in that basically you can relive the experience of the trip you've been on. And but more importantly than that, you get to you are required to sort of process the information that you gathered and what you've learned and heard and saw and so on. And so then that's been quite an interesting experience for me. And so my conclusion is that Bhutan basically kind of checks all the boxes for me, and it's a place and a country where they do just about everything right in the way it should be done. And there's this whole basically notion that pervades everything about societal wellness and responsibility and so on. And I think that is largely driven by this G&H that I talked about in the first video. And so then that's it's quite nice to see that you can have what are sort of like honorable principles, and that they're actually manifested and implemented in the society. And that bears out by the fact that in Bhutan there's an extremely low crime rate, for example, and there's virtually no homelessness in the country, I'm told. And there's free healthcare and education for people, and they seem to be well educated and in good health. And there seems to be gender equality is absolute as far as I can see. And so those are all pretty positive things. And I think that's primarily the influence of Buddhism in the country. And this would be one instance where the religion in the country is actually a force of good in the country. And who cares that they have phalluses plastered on the walls and hanging from the ceilings and so on? If it's kept evil spirits away for 4 centuries, maybe we have to give it to them on that one. Unlike the influence on religion in other countries, East and West, where it seems to be a force of division and conflict and hatred for the other side and war and all that sort of thing. And but in Bhutan, it strikes me as it's like a island of calm and sanity there, and so that's a refreshing thing to see. So if you're interested in traveling to Bhutan, I'd encourage you to do that. I'll put links to Sanjay's website in Bhutan and Daniel and George in Miami if you want details, for traveling there and so on. But anyway, thanks for watching this video, and pass it on to anybody else who might be interested. And thanks, and I'll talk with you after my next trip somewhere. So, okay, thanks, and bye for now.